The Republican leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell. Senator, thank you for coming this morning. You heard what these two Democratic senators, Senator Nelson and Senator Lieberman, just said. They said if you took out the Medicare buy-in proposal, if you took out the so-called class action proposal, and Senator Nelson says if you change the language on abortion, you could get more than 60 votes and you'd get some Republicans. Are they right?
Well, it's noteworthy that you had to have 3 Democrats on to explain the Democratic position. In fact, there are more Democratic positions than you'd find in a stack of newspapers, and therein lies the problem. And let's just talk about the core of the issue here. The American people are saying, please don't pass this. Your own CBS poll indicated opposition. The CNN poll said 61% were opposed and only 36% in favor. The government's actuary down at the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services said that it will drive up health care costs by $250 billion. Republicans, uniformly, without exception, believe that cutting $500 billion out of Medicare, raising $400 billion in new taxes, and providing the actual increase in health insurance premiums for everybody else is not reform. So you can see why, Bob, the Democrats are deeply divided. I doubt if those adjustments that were suggested by my 3 colleagues representing 3 different points of view about this bill right before me would get there. I think they're in serious trouble on this, and the core problem is the American people do not want us to pass it.
Well, but that's just, it's a hypothetical question, obviously, but do you think that that would attract some Republican votes if they would do what Senator Lieberman said?
No, there are 2 Democrats, one of whom is here and one of whom is not here, who've been voting with us against the Medicare cuts. Senator Ben Nelson has also objected to the $500 billion in Medicare cuts. Senator Jim Webb of Virginia has objected to the $500 billion in Medicare cuts. So even if you were able to fix these peripheral matters that you all were discussing, you still have the heart of the bill, Bob, which has $500 billion in Medicare cuts that Ben Nelson voted against those cuts and Jim Webb voted against those cuts.
Give me your version of why this buy-in to Medicare is not a good idea.
Well, Medicare is already unsustainable now. It's going broke in 7 years. Under the Reid bill, it's being used as a piggy bank. They're taking $500 billion out of Medicare, not to make it more sustainable, but to start a whole new entitlement program for a different set of Americans. And the Medicare buy-in would create even more problems because everyone anticipates a lot of very sick people would buy in. It would exacerbate the problems that Medicare has, and it's already unsustainable before you even get to this bill that has been styled health care reform. What we really need to do is to stop and start over and go step by step to deal with the cost issue, which is what the American people thought this was all about.
Let me just put up on the screen here what the chairman of the Republican Party, Michael Steele, said the other day. He said, Democrats have accused us of trying to delay, stall, slow down, and ultimately stop them from experimenting on our nation's health care. They are right. We do want to delay, stall, slow down, and ultimately stop them from experimenting on our nation's health care, and guess what? So do a majority of Americans. Is that your position as well?
Well, I think that it's clear that the American people do not want us to pass this 2,100-page bill that seeks to restructure 1/6 of our economy. But the Democrats have 60 people in their conference in the Senate. They could do anything they wanted to, Bob. You had 3 different points of view right here around this table a few minutes ago. That's the problem. They can't get together themselves.
Do you think no health care reform would be better than what the Democrats are proposing?
I'm not in favor of no health care reform. I think we ought to go step by step to fix the cost problem, target junk lawsuits against doctors and hospitals, have interstate competition among health insurance companies, incentivize wellness programs that the companies like Safeway have shown can bring down the cost. There are things we can do to improve what is already the finest health care in the world.
Do you think you can keep your caucus together here on this?
Republicans do not think $500 billion in Medicare cuts, $400 billion in new taxes, and higher insurance premiums for everyone else is reform. We want to reform the health care system. We do not believe this bill, this 2,100-page monstrosity, is health care reform.
You've been getting a little heat yourself on this from some Republicans. I noticed that last week Rush Limbaugh was really on your case. He says you're not putting up enough of a fight. He says you're helping the Democrats by letting this debate go on.
Look, the Republicans are together. Republicans who have a vote on this issue in the Senate are together. We all would like to see health care reform. We do not think this 2,100-page bill, with its $500 billion in Medicare cuts, its $400 billion in new taxes, and its higher insurance premiums, is the direction we ought to go.
He thinks you ought to use every parliamentary device that you have to slow this down and strangle it. If it comes to that, will you do that?
Well, we haven't seen the bill yet. You know, none of the Democrats you had here have seen the final bill. The assistant Democratic leader has not seen the final bill. First, we need to see the final bill. That'd be a good place to start before you even get to whatever parliamentary techniques may be available. Look, I think their biggest problem, Bob, is not 40 Senate Republicans. It's the American people who are saying, please don't pass this bill.
What is wrong with the setting up these nonprofits, which seems to be another part of this proposal, that would be overseen by the government to offer health care, which the government would negotiate the rates on?
You mean the government insurance issue?
Yes.
Well, you know, there's been a lot of discussion around that here inside the Beltway, whether the government insurance option is in or out. You still have a hugely controversial core of the bill that is not likely to change in whatever iteration of this bill comes out of Reid's conference room at the end. That's not likely to change. Most of us feel that the government getting in the insurance business is the first step, and there was a Democratic congressman from New York who said that this week, the first step to what's called a single-payer system. That is a European-type government-run healthcare system. We know the American people are not in favor of that. So I think the Democrats have a dilemma. Do they put it in? Do they take it out? They still got the core of the bill that's very controversial.
Do you think there's any way that any kind of a bill could be passed before Christmas?
With the American people as overwhelmingly opposed to this bill as they are, for the Democrats to basically arrogantly take the position that we're going to ignore public opinion and jam this through before Christmas, I think that's really a stretch.
One quick question. Larry Summers, the president's economic advisor, said this morning on one of the other shows that he thinks the recession is over. Do you think it is?
Well, the 10% of the Americans who are without work don't think it's over, and the 11% who are unemployed in Kentucky don't think it's over. I hope he's right that we're beginning to come out of this economic slowdown, but unemployment is the key.